So I will call to order the August 4th, 2022 regular meeting of the Hendersonville City Council. We begin with a silent invocation for people to pray or meditate as they choose, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. So if you would rise, please. Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Councilmember Smith is on line with us. I thought I heard his voice earlier. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, I am here.
Very good. We begin with public comment. Nobody has signed in to comment in person. Is there anyone seeking recognition online to comment?
Mayor, there is one hand raised online, Ken Fitch.
Okay, if he would unmute and go ahead and make comment.
Mr.
Ken Fitch, 1046 Patton Street. Regarding the Berkeley Park, Edwards Park exchange, as I've stated previously, the resolution should include a provision ensuring that the historic Berkeley Mills Ballpark, which includes the historic stadium as listed on the National Register of Historic Places, be preserved in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior's standards and guidelines for the treatment of historic properties. This historic place, with its multi-layers of sports history and cultural history, has great local significance, and it has also served as a hub of community for the Mill Village, to which many city and county residents have direct connection, and its continuing preservation has major importance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitch. We had one digital public comment submitted. This is by Louis Messereau, 1068 Maplewood Court, Hendersonville. His comment is, Hendersonville does not need a director of diversity. Diversity is gained through careful hiring of the most qualified candidates, regardless of color or any other characteristic. A director of diversity will necessarily insist that persons of preferred colors, races, sexual orientation, and other qualifying factors be hired instead of the most qualified candidate. That is a progressive strategy to destroy Hendersonville from within by making us just a junior Asheville. If Asheville is what you want, move there and leave us alone. Okay, that is all the public comment we have. Consideration of the agenda.
Mayor.
Oh, yes, sir? In just general public comment? Okay, so, okay, go ahead.
Madam Mayor and distinguished council.
If you would give your name and address for the clerk's record, please.
My name is Rodney Gilliam, and I live just outside the city limits of J-Bar Park. I'm a transitioning military service member serving in a fellowship. Serving in a fellowship under John Connett, and I'm studying the dynamics of local government. I had the privilege last Friday of doing an all-day ride-along with a team on the fire department. I don't know how often in these public comments period that you get to hear positive things, but I'm here to give you a very positive report. I was very quickly impressed, I have to say, with the top-notch professionalism, the discipline, the training, the infrastructure, the equipment of the fire department. Yeah, I felt very at home. I almost felt like I was back in the military again. I also had the rare privilege, I suppose, because Adam Murr told me every time he goes that he gets no calls and he just sits there. But I had the privilege of getting to respond to a call on Main Street where a fire actually happened, and I noticed, I wouldn't have said anything if these gentlemen weren't here right now, and ladies, but I was so impressed with how our fire department came out. They handled it so professionally. The safety and the concern for the public, their training, their knowledge, their expertise was so far above par. I have nothing but respect for this, and I would like to go on public record to let that be known. Thank you.
Thank you. We do appreciate the positive comments that we get for the employees that we're very proud of. So thank you. Right. Consideration of the agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to have added to or removed from the agenda?
Mayor Volk, I would like to remove item 5C. It's under the consent agenda, the sole source purchase for the standby generator at Fire Station 1. Remove that one. And also item 9F, which is the Fire Station 1 Edwards Park guaranteed maximum price. I expect both those items will be back at your August 24th meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else anyone would like to have added to or removed from the agenda? Not. A motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council approve the agenda as amended.
Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of approving the agenda, and I believe we still have to do a roll call vote since Mr. Smith is not here. Okay. Start with Ms. Hensley.
Aye.
Ms. Simpson.
Aye.
Ms. Roundtree.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
The mayor votes aye. Okay, we have our agenda. Thank you. Consent agenda, is there anything of the remaining items that anyone would like to move to the regular agenda so it can be discussed? Or a motion to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda?
Madam Mayor, I move the City Council approve the consent agenda as presented.
As amended.
As amended.
Excuse me.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Not. We will go around. Okay, let's start with Ms. Hensley again.
Aye.
Ms. Simpson.
Aye.
Ms. Roundtree.
Aye.
And Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye. So we have the consent agenda items covered. Presentations. Orderly MVP recipients. Mr. Fowler.
Thank you. Mayor Volk, members of City Council, it is time for our April through June 2022 quarterly MVPs, and I'm going to start tonight with the fire departments. I'd like for Chief Miller to come forward, as well as Will Justice, Ricky Mahaffey, and Patrick Korn, if they'll come and stand at the podium. So these three gentlemen who on June 1st, 2022 were operating in engine 9-3 were dispatched for an elderly female who had fallen. The crew found the patient in a state of distress. After the EMS had arrived to assist the patient, E93 crew showed initiative, care by putting all the patient's groceries so they would not spoil. They represent the city and the fire department with professionalism, a great attitude, and the willingness to go above and beyond their duties. So really showing that service excellence spirit by making sure that we took care of the patient, but also made sure that her food got put in the right location so it would be there, her groceries, when she got back. So I want to congratulate Will and Ricky and Patrick for a job well done, and thank you for your service to our citizens. And at this point, I'll ask Captain Tracy Cox and Sergeant Matt Capps to please come forward. And this was submitted by a citizen, I believe. So this past Saturday, while traveling east on I-26, my wife and I were headed to Hilton Head for a week's vacation. Our vehicle's charging system went out. After contacting our insurance company to send a wrecker, We waited on the side of the exit ramp for 2 hours and still no wrecker. I finally called 911 and they put me in touch with the police department. Officer Capps came and called a wrecker service for us. They were there in 20 minutes. Officer Capps, Sergeant Capps, took us to the dealership where the vehicle was delivered. After making arrangements with the dealership for repair, my wife and I found that we would need a rental car to continue to Hilton Head. Sergeant Capps then took us to the airport where we were able to rent a car. Without his assistance, this scenario could have turned into a real nightmare. You have a good man in Matt. He saved our day. Many thanks to Sergeant Matt Capps. So, Matt, thank you very much for your service excellence and really taking care of these folks traveling through our community. Thank you. And then finally, Paul Williams was nominated. He is not here tonight. He had a prior engagement, but no less, Paul was, the city was called by Party Hospital to notify us that a boring contractor had hit a 4-inch water main that supplied water to the day surgery portion of the hospital. It turns out that the break was on the customer side of the meter, which normally would have required the customer to hire a contractor and a private plumber to make the repair. Recognizing the critical nature of this line, Paul took it on himself to secure the repair parts and work with our excavation crew to make the repair. So instead of waiting for the hospital to try to find a private contractor and a plumber in this current market, Paul was able to engage one of our crews and make sure we kept water to the day surgery portion of the hospital. So I thank Paul for his service excellence in going above and beyond.
Thank you. Congratulations to all of our MVP recipients for this quarter. Okay, we have some public hearings. First of these is an annexation on Crest Road. Mr. Morrow.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. This is a satellite annexation petition. On July 7th, City Council accepted the City Clerk's certificate of sufficiency for this annexation petition. So the annexation petition was submitted by the property owner, which is the United States of America. So the actual application was filed by the Army Corps of Engineers. The annexation application is for one parcel that is approximately 20.60 acres along Crest Road. On the map that's on the right hand of the screen, you will see that this property is approximately 9,850 feet from the City of Hendersonville corporate limits. The subject property is closer to the primary corporate limits of the Village of Flat Rock, approximately 9,300 feet. The City of Hendersonville and the Village of Flat Rock re-entered their annexation agreement on August 3rd, 2018. The area to be annexed is located within the area that the participating municipalities agreed will not be annexed by Flat Rock and can be annexed by the City of Hendersonville. With that, there is a draft motion for approval and denial, and I also have a snippet of the annexation plat if y'all would like to see that as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have. Okay, thank you.
Excuse me. Any questions? Madam Clerk, has this public hearing been advertised in accordance with general statutes?
Yes, Mayor.
We will open this public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to comment on this annexation on Crest Road? Is there anyone online seeking recognition to comment?
No, ma'am.
Okay, then we will close that public hearing. Council, discussion or a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move the City Council adopt an ordinance of the City of Hendersonville to annex non-contiguous property owned by the United States of America, identified as PIN 9587-68-8771, finding that the standards established by North Carolina General Statute 160A-58 have been satisfied and that the annexation is in the best interest of the city.
Is there any discussion? Not, we will vote on this annexation. Ms. Hensley?
Aye.
Simpson?
Aye.
Ms. Roundtree?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye. So that annexation is taken care of. And on to the next, which is related, a rezoning on Crest Road.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. As you stated, this application is related to the previous application. Since that parcel has been annexed into the city, it's incumbent upon the city to assign zoning. In this case, the applicant did not request a particular zoning district, so the city staff is recommending that I-1 light industrial be the zoning that's applied for this parcel. You heard the details. It's a 20-acre tract, just under 20 acres, off of Crest Road, near Upward Road. The parcel is just outside the Upward Road Planning District, which was established in 2011, but you can see it kind of on the bottom, near the city seal there on the slide. The subject property is currently zoned industrial under Henderson County's zoning jurisdiction. It's located beyond the corporate limits in an area outside of the ETJ and outside of the Upward Road Planning District. North of Crest Road, in an area containing the subject property, county zoning allows for higher intensity uses with predominance of industrial, community commercial, and regional commercial zoning districts. While some R1 is present north of Crest Road and adjacent to the subject property, a majority of low-density residential zoning is found south of Crest Road. Industrial zoning is also present south of Crest Road, closer to the intersection of Upward Road. City zoning in the immediate area is limited to the CHMU special use parcel north of Biltmore Church, fronting Upward Road. Taking a look at the site photos, the upper left is a kind of typical view of this wooded site. The upper right is a photo of a couple of open pasture areas. I will note that there's a small creek along the border of the property. And then the bottom pictures are the photos of the frontage on Crest Road. The subject property is outside of the boundaries of the future land use map, but it is adjacent to Regional Activity Center to the northwest. Those properties that are adjacent, that are designated as Regional Activity Center, are also designated as priority growth areas on the city's growth management map. The county's future land use map designates the subject property and properties to the northeast and southwest as urban service area, and it states where residential density is to be maximized based on the availability of utilities. A small portion of the subject properties to the west are designated as industrial in the county's future land use map, and properties east of Crest Road and to the south of the subject property are designated as Henderson County Rural, Open Space, and Agriculture. So taking a look at since the closest future land use designation is Regional Activity Center, we're focusing on that, on the goals of that designation, which is to meet the large-scale retail needs of Hendersonville's residents while encouraging mixed-use walkable design through redevelopment and infill projects. The land use chapter goes on to state that we should expand the city's ETJ to include land expected to experience significant growth pressure and to annex developing areas in a contiguous manner that promotes fiscal responsibility and encourage annexations that improve the land use balance in the city of Hendersonville. The population and housing chapter also promotes infill development, and the natural and environmental resources chapter touches on protecting land adjacent to streams, encouraging clustered development, and promoting the preservation of woodlands. The other chapters of the comprehensive plan did not have any relevant goals or strategies. So the next criteria we consider is compatibility. In this case, we have a subject property in a lightly developed area, close proximity to an interstate and a developing commercial corridor. Surrounding land uses include vacant land and institutional, religious, wholesale, and other commercial uses. Buffer yard standards for the I-1 help to ensure compatibility. The third criteria is change conditions. In this case, we've seen increased development demand along Upward Road. It's anticipated that future growth will continue. The fourth criteria is public interest. In this case, the industrial zoning presents an opportunity for additional employment. Conversely, industrial zoning could permit uses which are incompatible with residential uses. The fifth criteria is public facilities. Subject property would be served by all city services. Upward Road is designated as a boulevard and is maintained by NCDOT. Crest Road is also maintained by NCDOT and is designated as a minor thoroughfare. The sixth criteria, the effect on natural environment. In this case, the property does have a blue line stream and it is a heavily wooded site. The planning board voted 6-0 to recommend proposing the rezoning, and they offered the comprehensive plan consistency statement as shown on the screen. They also provided these three rationale for approval that are shown on the screen. I've also provided a draft reasonableness statement for denial, if you should decide that. And with that, I will open it up for questions.
Any questions? Okay. Madam Clerk, has this public hearing been advertised in accordance with general statutes?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. We will open this public hearing. Would anyone present like to comment on this rezoning on Crest Road? Anyone like to comment? Is anyone online seeking recognition to comment?
No, Mayor.
Okay. We will close that public hearing. So, council, discussion or a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move that the City Council adopt an ordinance amending the officials zoning map of the City of Hendersonville, changing the zoning designation of the subject property pins 9587-68-8771 from Henderson County Industrial Zoning to the City of Hendersonville I-1 Industrial Zoning District based on the following. 1, the petition is found to be consistent with the City of Hendersonville 2030 comprehensive plan based on the information from the staff analysis, and because the proposed industrial zoning presents an opportunity to improve the land use balance as called for in Chapter 8 of the city's 2030 comprehensive plan. 2, additionally, we found the petition to be reasonable in the public interest based on the information from the staff analysis, public hearing, and because 1, the proposed zoning is compatible with surrounding land use. 2, the proposed zoning presents an opportunity for the additional employment. 3, furthermore, we recommend designating the future land use of the parcel as regional activity center.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Not, we will vote. Ms. Roundtree?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Hensley?
Aye.
Simpson?
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye. So that property has been rezoned. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have zoning text amendment regarding animal hospitals and clinics in MIC.
Yes. Thank you. This petition was originally submitted by Andrew Riddle, but it was withdrawn after it went to planning board due to the legitimacy of the request. Staff is continuing this forward. It was heavily supported by the planning board, so we wanted to go ahead and bring this request to you, which is to add animal hospitals and clinics as a permitted use in the MIC zoning district. It aligns with other similar, with this use that is also found in other similar zoning districts. It went before the Planning Board's Legislative Committee on June 21st, and they were supportive of the proposal. The change would simply be to add animal hospitals and clinics, as shown on the screen, to the list of permitted uses within MIC. These are all of the permitted uses in that district currently. There's some other minor adjustments. Under industrial zoning, it permits animal hospitals and clinics subject to supplementary standards, but there are no supplementary standards for animal hospitals and clinics. So we're correcting that. And then a typo in the definition for animal boarding facility. The first criteria considered for a rezoning is the comprehensive plan consistency. The urban institutional designation on the future land use map states the goal to create a cohesive, well-defined urban campus for medical and educational institutions with supportive office, service, and residential uses that is integrated with downtown. And staff finds that the animal hospitals and clinics are consistent with this goal and the recommended land uses. The land use and development chapter goes on to encourage infill development. It recommends reviewing zoning standards and revising as necessary to enable compatible infill. It suggests that we consider a full range of short and long-term impacts when reviewing zoning code changes and updating the zoning code to ensure conformance with the comprehensive plan. The population and housing chapter also promotes mixed land use patterns and compatible infill. There were no relevant portions of the natural and environmental resources chapter, nor the cultural and historic resources, community facilities, or water resources chapter. And the transportation and circulation chapter just had some minor points of relevancy. The second criteria considered is compatibility. In this case, animal hospitals and clinics is a medical use with similar impacts as other medical offices and hospitals and other permitted uses within the MIC district. The third criteria is change conditions. In this case, population growth in Hendersonville has increased demand for services such as veterinary clinics. Our fourth criteria, public interest. In this case, the expansion of animal hospitals and clinics to the MIC would place the use within an area already serving medical needs, and the location of MIC would place this use in close walkable proximity to residential uses and other services. Under considering public facilities, the MIC zoning district is an urban location that is well served by our public facilities. And the sixth criteria, effect on natural environment. There are no known anticipated negative impacts to the environment from this petition. The Planning Board voted 6-0 to recommend approval of the text amendment, and they provided the comprehensive plan consistency statement shown on the screen. And they also offered up the 2 rationale for approval as part of their reasonableness statement, also shown on the screen. And I've provided a draft rationale for denial if you should need it. And with that, I will open it up for questions.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, or any discussion or anything first? Okay. Madam Clerk, has this public hearing been advertised in accordance with general statutes?
Yes, Mayor.
We will open this public hearing. Is there anyone present who would like to comment on the zoning text amendment? Is anyone online seeking recognition?
Mayor Ken Fitch is asked to be recognized.
All right. You can unmute.
Ken Fitch, 1046 Patton Street. There's a reasonable rationale that such a facility should be permissible in the MIC district that includes a range of healthcare facilities. The only comment I would make, and is rendered at the planning board meeting, is that there should be adequate buffering and setbacks between such a facility and adjacent residential use. For example, going forward, I am sure Chief Mahan would not welcome repeated calls from residents at 1 or 2 a.m. with complaints about barking dogs at such a facility, even for incidental use. Now, one is aware that there is another agenda item which may have some connection, but that situation does not present this buffering and setback issue. Indeed, in this other project, the subject property is buffered from and not contiguous to residential uses. However, for other projects that may appear, it is something that should be considered. And one understands that staff may be proposing clarification and corrections related to these facilities. So perhaps this item, if not addressed tonight, can be further addressed at your direction, because it is a potential issue. It might be rare, but if it happens, you will know about it. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitch. Is anyone else seeking recognition?
No, ma'am.
Okay, we'll close that public hearing. Council, discussion or a motion?
I'll do it. Madam Mayor, I move City Council adopt an ordinance amending the official City of Hendersonville zoning ordinance, Article 5-zoning district classifications, Section 5-10-1 and Section 5-12-1 permitted uses, and Article 12 definition of terms, Section 12.2 definition of commonly used terms and words based on the following. The petition is found to be consistent with the City of Hendersonville 2030 Comprehensive Plan based on the information from the staff analysis and the public hearing, and because the 2030 Comprehensive Plan Land Use and Development Chapter calls for the city to consider short and long-term impacts on compatibility with existing development, and further recommends the consideration be given to determine if an application demonstrates a clear public purpose. We find this petition to be reasonable and in the public interest based on the information from the staff analysis and the public hearing, and because the petition addresses additional opportunities for the provision of services for pets and other animals within the City of Hendersonville zoning district, and the proposed use aligns with the intent of the MIC zoning district to serve as a medical district.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? If not, we will vote on this. Ms. Simpson?
Aye.
Ms. Roundtree?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Hensley?
Aye.
And mayor votes aye. Okay, so that amendment carries. And another rezoning, standard rezoning, 1027 Fleming Street.
Yes, thank you. As mentioned, we have a standard rezoning request for 1027 Fleming Street. This comes from Andrew Riddle. The zoning on the site currently is special use, MIC special use. As we know, special uses were converted to CZDs as part of the 160D changes. The parcel in question is just just under an acre, and it's in the urban institutional future land use designation. Parcels to the north of the subject property are zoned C3 highway business. The C3 zoning district follows the commercial corridor along Asheville Highway. Asheville Highway is a major artery and gateway to the city and provides frontage for a wide range of businesses with varying types of goods and services. To the west, the parcel is bordered by the remaining tract of the MIC Special Use District, which was approved in 2008 and never constructed. Further to the west are residential uses zoned R6 and R15 and R10. Most of these residential uses are comprised of single-family dwellings. Parcels to the east and south are zoned MIC and PID, Planned Institutional Development. The majority of uses in this area are professional and medical offices. To the east is Hendersonville High School. To the south is Pardee Hospital. The surrounding area contains uses which support Pardee Hospital. Taking a look at the current permitted uses under the special use, you see those at the top of the screen, limited to offices, businesses, professional and public, personal services, consistent with the purpose of the MIC classification, and retail stores. Below that, you see the full list of permitted uses within the MIC. And I'll clarify that this was an existing building prior to 2008. In 2008, it was incorporated into a site plan that was proposed and approved and got final site plan approval, but was never constructed. And so that land remained vacant, but it did get combined as one large parcel that included this structure and its associated parking lot. And it has since been subdivided off, so it is on its own parcel. So this rezoning is just for that parcel where the existing building stands, and is proposing to allow these uses that are shown on the screen rather than being limited to the ones at the top of the screen. And it would not impact the remainder of the special use district. If someone were to develop that, they'd have to rezone that property, either to standard rezoning or conditional rezoning. So taking a look at this existing building that I mentioned, you can see some of the site photos. You see the structure and the surrounding parking lot, some trees on the upper right that border facing Asheville Highway. And you can see the location on the future land use map that designates it urban institutional and neighborhood activity center. It's split. It's located at the fringe of a neighborhood activity center. Parcels to the north, east, and south are also designated urban institutional and neighborhood activity center. Urban institutional in this area is due to the proximity to downtown and the prevalence of medical and educational institutions, the most prominent being Pardee and Hendersonville High School. The neighborhood activity center designation follows the entry corridor along Asheville Highway. Parcels to the west are designated as urban institutional and medium intensity neighborhood. The majority of this area is comprised of single-family homes. Some of the existing single-family homes are located in the urban institutional designation as well. So our first criteria is looking at the comprehensive plan consistency. And in this case, we're looking at the urban institutional, and the proposal with MIC zoning is very consistent with urban institutional future land use designation. It is in a priority infill area. Population and housing chapter also supports infill development. Natural resources and environmental chapter did not have any relevant goals or strategies, nor did the cultural and historic resources chapter. Though I will note there is a plaque there that recognizes the past home of a girls' school that was located in that area. But it is not a local landmark or historic district. The community facilities chapter nor the water resources chapter had any relevant strategies, and there were only minor points on their transportation and circulation. The second criteria relates to compatibility. In this case, the existing office building is compatible with the surrounding area and the Pardee campus. Uses within this standard MIC zoning district align with those in the area, and MIC is consistent with the type of development found along Fleming Street. And changed conditions, I went over that earlier regarding the previously approved MIC special use district, which was not constructed, and that this proposal would open up additional uses for that existing building. Under public interest, it would allow for productive reuse of an existing building. So we would be being good stewards, utilizing existing materials that are used. Under public facilities, the site will be served by city water and sewer. All city services are already serving this site, and the effect on the natural environment would be null, as there's no development proposed with this. And the planning board voted 5-0 to recommend approval, and they offered up the comprehensive plan consistency statement shown on the screen. And they offered the 3 rationale for approval as part of their reasonableness statement for your consideration. And we also have a draft reasonableness statement for denial if you need that. With that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Any questions? Okay. All right. Madam Clerk, has this public hearing been advertised in accordance with general statutes?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone present who wishes to comment on this rezoning on Fleming Street? Is anyone online seeking recognition?
Yes, ma'am. Ken Fitch has asked to
Okay.
be recognized.
Ken Fitch, 1046 Patton Street, speaking in support of the action that would restore this specific property to its traditional uses and previous zoning. Many of us are very familiar with this facility and have visited for treatments or have accompanied family members for memorable visits. This action removes the unwieldy designation that inhibits its traditional uses and necessary upgrades. However, one should state that there is some public concern about the preservation of the historic stone pillars that are remnants of the Fassifern School complex. There has been a statement that there is an intention for these pillars to remain, although one does note that the commemorative plaque has been removed from one of the pillars. So some reassurance of their continued existence would be something positive to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitch. Is anyone else seeking recognition?
No, ma'am.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close that public hearing. Okay, discussion or a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move the City Council adopt an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the City of Hendersonville, changing the zoning designation of the subject property pins 9569-6-2887 from mixed MIC-SU, Medical Institutional and Cultural Special Use Zoning District to MIC, Medical Institutional and Cultural Zoning District, based on the following. The petition is found to be consistent with the City of Hendersonville 2030 Comprehensive Plan, based off the information staff analysis, and because the goals and strategies of LU-12 urban institutional calls for primary recommended land use, which aligns with the proposed MIC zoning. Furthermore, we find this petition to be reasonable and in the public interest based on the information from the staff analysis, public hearing, and because MIC is the zoning district established for the area surrounding Party Hospital, the property is located in an area designated as priority infill area according to the city's comprehensive plan, and the subject property contains an existing office building and is well suited to house a range of uses permitted in the MIC.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? No, we will vote. Ms. Hensley?
Aye.
Ms. Simpson? Aye. Ms. Roundtree?
Sorry, aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye. So that rezoning is taken care of too. Thank you to our development staff for those. Next, we have installment financing contract. Mr. Moore.
Mayor and City Council, no agenda item, no presentation for this agenda item. This is our resolution authorizing staff, along with our financial advisors and special counsel, to approach the local government commission for financing on the Fire Station 1, Edwards Park, fire ladder, and fire engine projects, not to exceed $18.5 million.
Okay. Any questions? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Madam Clerk, has this public hearing been advertised in accordance with general statutes?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, we will open this public hearing. Is anyone present who wishes to comment on the installment financing contract? Is there anyone online who wishes to comment?
Yes, ma'am. Lynn has raised her hand online.
Okay. Go ahead.
Lynn Williams, Fabric Avenue. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Barely.
Okay, I'll try to speak up. I just wanted to comment briefly on the funding for the fire station. Can you hear me now? Okay. I was wanting to comment that potentially to lower some of the costs and potentially get federal funds, you might want to reconsider having a historic report done on the property so that we don't ban ourselves from getting federal funds in the future. I'm concerned, and I'm asking the council for more compromise about requesting the preservation of Boyd Park and the concern around losing 2 public parks with unique historic elements. So this is a lot of money, $18.5 million of public funds, and my concern is the ask is to please, preserve our parks, and the historic mini golf course, some elements there, and the historic Spinner Stadium. And then I have another concern with Oedipus, the contractor. I submitted photographs to the stormwater administrator this week from the parking deck project where there was massive amounts of waste coming from the site and going into our sewage system. And so I just really ask for that oversight when you're working with this contract with Oedipus. Once again, with Mr. Smith, I'll just leave it at that for now. That's my comment for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else seeking recognition?
No, Mayor.
No? Okay, we'll close that public hearing. Council, discussion or a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move that the City Council adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Hendersonville, North Carolina, authorizing the negotiation of an installment financing contract and providing for certain other related matters thereto as presented.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay. If not, we will vote on that motion. Ms. Roundtree?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Hensley?
Aye.
Ms. Simpson?
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye. Right. Can proceed with that then. Thank you very much. It's a big bite, but it's big projects too. Right. Unfinished business, we do have board and commission vacancy appointments. And this is regarding the Board of Adjustment. You do have a memo about this. There was some question last time regarding people serving on both the planning board and the Board of Adjustment, but city attorney said that that's okay.
Yes, ma'am, we've resolved that.
Okay. All right. So we have 2 full vacancies ending June 30th, 2025, and 1 unexpired term ending June 30th, 2023. Would someone like to make a motion to appoint certain people?
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council appoint Frederick Nace and Laura Flores to serve a term on the Board of Adjustment ending June 30th, 2025.
Okay. So Frederick Nace and Laura Flores have been nominated for a term ending in 2025. Are there further nominations? Not, we will vote on those appointments of Frederick Nace and Laura Flores for the Board of Adjustment ending June 30th, 2025. Any discussion? Ms. Simpson?
Aye.
Ms. Roundtree?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Hensley?
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye. So we have those 2 appointments made. We have the unexpired term ending 2023. Does anyone wish to make a nomination for that?
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council appoint Peter Hanley to serve an unexpired term on the Board of Adjustment ending June 30th, 2023.
Peter Hanley has been nominated for the term ending 2023. Are there further nominations? Discussion? If not, those in favor of appointing Peter Hanley to an unexpired term on the Board of Adjustment ending June 30th, 2023, say aye. Or nope, sorry, got to go around the room again. Forgot. Okay, Ms. Simpson.
Aye.
Ms. Roundtree.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hensley.
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye. So we do have our vacancies on that filled. Thank you. Okay, unfinished business. To the next page, new business. Proposal to adjust the second monthly meeting agenda rules. Mr. Conant?
Mayor Volt, members of City Council, when we established our second monthly meeting, I guess 2 years ago now, we established some informal rules from the City Council regarding keeping the meetings to 2 hours, and also the items would be presentation in nature, and there would be no formal votes would be taken. You wouldn't know it from the last 2 City Council meetings, knock on wood, we're still moving pretty quickly tonight, but in the past year or so, we've had lots of long meetings, and several of you, if not all of you, have asked about, would it be appropriate to add non-controversial administrative items to that second monthly meeting in order to shorten this meeting, our regular monthly meeting, a little bit, and make sure we got things done in a timely manner within 1 month. So staff, the city manager, and again, these are informal rules that we would ask, and for your speaking with the city attorney, don't believe we need to have a formal vote, but just concurrence that this would be an informal policy of the council to allow us to, at our second monthly meetings, to take action, take actual votes and action on things such as our board and commission appointments, which we just did, financial and bidding items, typically non-controversial, internal policy amendments, personnel policy, things like that, and then the non-controversial contract matters. We would ask that for it be your informal policy. I'll be clear that we would hold no public hearings at this meeting, and strictly be more administrative in nature, but it would allow us to take action. We would also continue to stick to the 2-hour limit for that second meeting. So that is the city manager's recommendation. I ask for concurrence, discussion, assent on those items.
Discussion.
Sounds good to me.
Mr. Smith, you have any comments?
I don't have any comments. I talked to John at length about this, and I think it's a good idea, knowing what probably long meetings we have coming in the future, and the fact that many of these things are often on the consent agenda anyway. So no problems.
Okay. Right.
I'll take that as direction. Thank you.
Okay. Do we need to vote on it? There is a motion there. I don't.
There's, I think, city attorney and I think if as long as we have good, because you can change it at any point, but we understand that we have your consent to move forward.
All right.
That's correct.
Go on to the next update regarding remote meetings. Speaker.
I get to have the fun one. So as everybody's aware, the governor has announced that he is going to end the state of emergency on the 15th. Assuming that happens, it calls into question, well, what about remote meetings? Are boards and committees, the city council, still going to be able to hold a remote meeting? Are members still going to be able to participate remotely? So before the state of emergency was ever enacted, I had always been of the opinion that for at least the elected bodies, that the statute required the physical presence of at least a quorum. But that if a member participated remotely and they didn't vote, no harm, no foul, because you had a physical quorum, present in person, and that's sufficient to take action. And what you're concerned about here is making valid decisions that would be upheld and wouldn't be subject to being overturned because you didn't have a legally convened meeting. So, but I had always been of the opinion that for, appointed advisory boards, the rules were a little less strict because there aren't as many rules governing them, and they don't have a statute that says you have to be present to have a quorum. And so, so when the state of emergency came into place, well, everybody was like, well, what are we going to do? And so the legislature responded by allowing remote meetings to occur, but only in a state of emergency. When they were considering that, they could have adopted something that says you can have remote meetings and remote participation anytime, but they didn't do that. They said during a state of emergency. So it calls into question, well, if everybody could do that before, then why was there a need to even adopt authority to do it if we already had that authority? And so and the other thing they did was the way they defined a remote meeting was pretty broad. You know, one would think that they would define it that you have a majority of members participating remotely, but they didn't. They said if one member is participating remotely, that's a remote meeting, and it's going to trigger all these things. And like I said, before the state of emergency, I had always felt like a member could participate remotely, even on city council. So if a city council member could participate, why did they have to make the definition so broad to say in a state of emergency, one person can participate remotely? So I guess due to and I'm reading things on the city and county attorney listserv and from the Institute of Government that goes both ways. And I guess from my perspective, my recommendation is always going to be, unless city council feels otherwise, is to take the least risk approach. And that is to discontinue remote participation until we have more guidance from the legislature. I do think that they're going to have to address it one way or another because everybody's gotten so used to participating remotely. And it is so convenient. And especially for an advisory board that their decisions, they're important, but they're not going to legally get us in trouble in court if they don't, you know what I mean? It's much less risk with a pure advisory decision. So at least for city council, my recommendation is to, until we get better guidance from the legislator, to discontinue that practice. With regards to your boards and committees, for your statutorily created boards, the ones whose action is legally required, I would make the same recommendation because there's high risk associated with somebody attacking that decision. While they don't have the same statute that you do that says, that talks about physical presence in a meeting, I am going to, unless, you feel differently, recommend at least that for those boards that they also do not do remote participation. For purely advisory boards, right now, Ms. Reese sent out an email, I think, to everybody that kind of said what the rule is in the charters for those pure advisory boards. And what it says is that as long as you have a majority present in person, that members can participate and even vote remotely. That is what is currently in the charter. There's a fairly low risk there. It is convenient, but it's up to that becomes more of a policy call for you guys as far as whether you want to continue to allow your purely advisory boards to participate remotely. I mean, the same argument can be made with them as I'm suggesting for city council, but there's just much less risk associated with that. So I'm happy to go into as much detail about what one law says versus the other. I figure you don't want to hear that, but I'm happy to do that if you'd like. Answer any questions that you have, and what asks for, you don't have to decide today. You could think about it and take it up at your August 24th meeting if you'd like. But I do know that our advisory boards and committees are asking for some direction, and are they still going to be able to meet remotely after the state of emergency. And I do think that is largely a board call, or city council call.
Okay. If I can just be sure, as far as city council, before the state of emergency, we did occasionally have people who called in and could listen, maybe be part of the discussion, but could not vote.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that what we are back to now?
Well, my recommendation goes further than that for now, until we get further guidance, because of the way they defined a remote meeting. When you used to do that, we didn't have a definition of a remote meeting in the statute. But I would also tell you that if you do want to allow remote participation for city council, that would be the way to do it, is to have it so that there's no vote. You don't rely on that person to make up a quorum, right? And that's the least risk way of doing it if you do want to continue that practice.
Madam Mayor, may I speak?
Yes, please.
It is somewhat ironic that we're having this discussion while
I know, I start to apologize to you in advance.
while I'm sitting in the Azores. So I think if the General Assembly does not give us the authority to do this, then I agree completely that, we can't do it. It does sound to me like there may still be some wiggle room, but based upon your research, Angie, it sounds like it's very gray, and that we're going to go to the safe harbor of something that's sort of black and white, and I totally understand that. I think with regard to advisory boards, I sort of agree. We somewhat struggle to get people to participate, and if this allows people to participate on a board that is simply advising us and is not providing a decision like the Board of Adjustment, then, I do see this as a tool to get people to participate that maybe wouldn't otherwise. I don't know. So those are my comments. I will comment historically, though. So I know that this happened to me one time, and this was probably 5 years ago, but I was in Maine when we had this meeting, and we didn't have Zoom then. But actually, I did vote. I mean, I was allowed to vote at that meeting. So I do think it's a significant change to our policy and what we're doing. But I recognize that we are at the mercy of the General Assembly, and if they say we can't do it, then we can't do it. So those are just my comments.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just want to say I'm kind of torn on the issue just because I do think that doing public business is best served in person. I just don't think the discussions that we're able to have or the true level of participation in even our advisory boards is as effective as it is when you're in person. I know our MPO meetings have been very difficult on Zoom, getting, good participation and discussion. And so I completely get that aspect of it. But I also appreciate a dedicated city councilman like Mr. Smith, who is across the world right now, who is doing city business while he's on vacation because he's committed to doing what's best for Hendersonville. So I hate to see somebody penalized and not be able to participate in a meeting when they're really, their goal is to do that. So hopefully there's some wiggle room down the line in the future, but obviously you are an attorney, and I will take all of the advice that you give. But that's how I feel about it.
I have a question, Angie. So do we, at a later meeting, need to adopt some policy? Or is this just what the law says now and whether we adopt a policy or not?
Well, you do have a policy that we need to amend or suspend or something. So we really need feedback today, but I do think we can bring it back consistent with the discussion that the board is having. But I mean, there is a policy, so we have to do something.
Right. Basically, after August 15th, our policy officially has to change.
That's correct.
Right, okay.
Are you looking for a motion, or you're just telling us this is how it's going to be?
Well, I'm asking you
Input.
how you want to proceed, kind of your consensus and how you want to proceed. If you're willing to suspend the electronic participation until we have further guidance, that would be good for us to know. And then some direction regarding the boards and committees would be also helpful for at least, the statutory boards as well as the advisory boards. If you want to think about it, we can bring it back. I
I almost feel like it's easier to suspend it for everything until we have more information instead of picking and choosing. And like, we may know what's a statutory board and what's an advisory board, and some people are still confused.
Yes.
So I feel like it might be clearer to just say, we're not doing virtual meetings right now. Agreed.
Can I ask another question, Angie?
Sure.
And that is, so this simply applies to voting members of a committee. So in other words, if people attending Zoom online want to make comments at public hearings, this does not prohibit that.
This does not change that at all.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have mentioned that. Thank you for saying that. But yes, absolutely.
So I think what I heard, the consensus is that we will require all meetings to be in person and all boards will meet. There'll be no remote participation is what.
Until further notice.
Further notice.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. And we'll wait and get more information. Pickleball court discussion. Who is, okay.
Mark
Here we
Stierwalt.
go. Mr. Stierwalt.
Good evening, council members. This is largely the same presentation that I gave to you a couple of weeks ago. We have a little more information involved, but just to summarize, pickleball is on the rise. Lots of people are doing it. It's getting younger every year. It's one of the fastest growing sports in the nation, and it doesn't seem there's enough pickleball courts to meet demand. So we were given an opportunity with Boyd Park and the racquetball court, and we thought we were going to be able to put in two tennis courts rather in that space. However, it's not quite wide enough, so we need direction on where to go from here. We have multiple options of how we address this, or if we want to bring in pickleball courts. We are also to the point that the basketball court over in this area, you can see the sediment that is accumulated kind of in the middle there. Just a random satellite photo. It is a bit low, and it also has hundreds of feet of linear cracks in it. Okay, some of those have already been repaired. Same thing goes for our two tennis courts. And especially with tennis and pickleball, once those repairs start to fail, it makes like a dead spot in the game. So if the ball hits it, it's similar if a pool ball hits a rail that's busted, it's kind of flat. So we are going to need to address the basketball court and especially the tennis court with whatever plan we come up with. One of the first options would be, we can't fit two full-size tennis courts on the racquetball site. However, we could put in a full-size tennis court and two permanent pickleball courts. I have some of the pricing or approximations of what it would cost to redo these courts. And essentially, we're to the point with both of the old courts that we're going to have to rebuild them, that we can no longer, kind of skim coat it. I'm not suggesting we put in 12 pickleball courts. This just shows that both of these two sites, we could put 6 courts. The upper racquetball site would be a little bit tight, but we could make it work. Essentially, it's about 100 feet wide. Normally, you'd want 109 or so, which is what our existing tennis courts are. Ms. Simpson wanted to see what 12 courts would look like versus 8, which we had proposed. The nice thing about our basketball court is it is 120 by 120, which would allow comfortably for 8 courts. If we were to add another 4 courts, it would, increase the cost by approximately a third. So, my proposal was to, since we have the full-size court available there, is to put the pickleball courts near the entrance. I think it would ease the parking somewhat, especially if they were all full. And then it would also allow use of the pavilion for kind of overflow and shade, things like that, if we did not provide a cover. I also proposed that we shift the basketball court. It's not quite to scale, but it's just to signify where it is. But I think we could go from 4 baskets to 6 or possibly 8 baskets with half-court setups on the existing site. I do have another option as well. This would be more of a long-range option that would be slightly more complicated. If we were to remove the softball field, and one of the things that we were concerned about is if we went with a covered court would be just kind of the visual aspect and how it would affect the park. By going with a longer, more narrow footprint, we could lower the height of the roof line from about 50 feet down to about 36, 37 feet. This would also, I think, one way that we could address this to the visual impact is we really could put in kind of a screen, some trees, landscaping, hedge, things like that. Also, you have a pedestrian bridge that would lead right to the site. We also have the option, if we did have tournaments or something like that, we are getting ready to also replace the vehicular bridge that accesses the site, so we would have parking available on the softball field or a portion of it. It would also be possible to put in a small gravel parking area. The reason that this is a little more complicated is one of the things that the staff has proposed is doing a full-scale stream restoration within the park. And part of that would be to increase the flood holding or the floodwater capacity. And if we were to do that, we'd hopefully reduce our flooding, especially in the parking lot at Patton Pool, from close to 30 times last year to hopefully we could get that into the single digits. A good example of staff time that was committed is this past week we received 3.5 inches of rain. I had 5 staff spend, I believe it was 3.5 or 4 hours working on that, with equipment and things like that. So if we do the stream restoration, it would be to address the flooding. It would also increase the flood capacity, but that would allow us hopefully to achieve a zero rise. So floodwaters wouldn't rise, so we could elevate these courts a little bit. So that would be a longer term proposal if we were to use that site. And that's just a visual to see. Something like what it would look like. That's 6 courts. Add one on each side. Almost a separate discussion, but can be in the same vein, is if we were to go with covered courts. The pickleball community has really been behind this. I'm not going to say insistent on it. They're just really happy to have the opportunity to get more public courts. But Opelika, Alabama, put 12 courts underneath. This is actually a picture of the site. Underneath the cover, you can see it's kind of the green and white one down there at the bottom. If we did have something like that, we could put the, Hendersonville emblem on it or something like that. We also could, again, kind of landscape it in such a way, put in larger trees to help tone it down somewhat. So if we were to do all this in Patton Park, that is an option. There's also the possibility of finding another location. A lot of the park kind of property that we have available is currently within floodplain. So it does add some complexity. So, and the cost on the court or the cover on the bottom right-hand corner would be approximately $500,000. And again, if we went with a longer, kind of narrower design or smaller design, we could get that roof line lower by quite a bit. These are just some different court sizes, things that we could adapt with, just kind of showing you what 6 or 8 would look like, or 4 on a single tennis court. Someone asked, could we put a cover over the existing racquetball court site? And essentially, it would be very, very expensive. All of the red lines that you see on this are overhead power lines. So it's a small site. We could only put a maximum of 6 courts on there. And then on top of that, we would have to move numerous power lines to be able to utilize that site. These are just some of the basic costs involved. If we were going to go with a 12-court design, they would be a little bit higher. All right. Does anyone have any questions?
Can you explain why option 4 involves so much more time?
To get a zero-rise permit, we would have to do the stream restoration as well, more than likely.
There's grant funding available for stream restoration, right?
There is, but we would have to acquire that grant. So it would also have to be engineered. We've already done some of the surveying associated with that. And and a little bit of the geotechnical work that would be associated with that, or that's getting ready to start probably in the next week or so. But it's not that it's insurmountable, and frankly, as a stream restoration project, it's pretty easily. It's a pretty easy job. You're going to be removing sediment, or, you know, kind of the, I guess in the picture it would be the right side. We would be moving towards the field, approximately 40 feet, 30 to 40 feet. We'd also be able to put in some meanders. We'd be able to put in some kind of some more stately trees and things like that, native uses. But yes, there's quite a bit of grant funding available, usually at the 50% match or 80 or 20% match, just depending on the grant. So.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Stillwell, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
The stream restoration,
Mm-hmm.
is that something that we are planning to do, even if we weren't on pickleball courts?
If I had my choice, we would. That is, however, really up to you. It
Okay,
is something
that's
that I
not-
brought up before the pickleball conversation came on board. I have a history with stream restoration. I understand it. I recognize need, and I think we could have a much better product. Another part of that is that in Patton Park we have this beautiful stream that you can't see at all. It kind of has grown up sort of like a jungle. So one of the things I proposed to Mr. Huffman is if we did this to have kind of like more of a park-like setting, kind of an educational approach, kind of a park-style setting on part of the stream. Part of it would be completely naturalized, and then another part would be kind of more of an urban landscape that could be more maintained. So to
But
answer your
that
question, yes.
Yeah, but that project is not currently in our list of projects. That project in and of itself would be a new project regardless of the pickleball courts.
Correct. It would just dovetail nicely.
What type of, like, current planning list do we have for stream restoration? Like, is there do we have a queue, or?
So a couple projects and I'm going to turn to Brent Detweiler in a minute, and he can correct me if I'm wrong. So we've got some projects on the water and sewer side, on the sewer side in Lee, to protect our sewer lines. And I believe Mike Huffman has just got a grant, or getting ready to get a grant for Sullivan Park. So we have a stream restoration grant. I believe we've gotten the grant. We got the grant to do stream restoration to remove invasive species in Sullivan Park. So those are the projects we currently have. And then, so we would execute these projects, and my guess is coming in the next grant cycle, Mike would apply for a similar grant to do the Patton Park site. So,
I believe Mike's also working on the public site or the property.
Oh, you're right,
close to that,
you're right.
As well as a wetland restoration.
That's right. Sorry. Good point.
But this is also one of the easier projects that we would have on the table. Again, you're really largely just removing quite a bit of soil, hauling it to a different site, and then replanting it immediately. So, yeah.
Having floated down several of these streams and creeks and understanding what, restoration can do for the water and, just flooding issues. I think because this one actually isn't just an aesthetic project, it's actually going to mitigate flooding. It seems like something that we should really look into, especially to protect Patton Park, because I've been in Patton Park several times when it's flooded, and, a flooded park is a non-usable park, and I would like people to use it all the time, and so.
And in 2021, I believe it flooded 30 times was the number. I think we're at about 18 currently this year.
If I could also add, I'm not sure what the project was under Michael Huffman, but we've done a project out there, and whatever that project was has significantly cut down on the flooding of the Beverly Hanks parking lot. And I just know that because that's where my wife works. So I'm not sure what they did, but whatever they did, cut down on that lot being flooded. So obviously, there's a history that it can work. I'm assuming a restoration project would still have to be an ongoing maintenance that every X number of years we're working on it again. I mean, I'm assuming, is that the case?
Not necessarily, no. If it's done correctly, usually you can also, whoever the contractor is, you can obligate them to come back for, say, 3 to 5 years, and if there is any maintenance, and do it. But largely, it's very minor. You know, it seems like live staking or something volunteers could handle, unless there's a catastrophe or something like that. But it is if it's done correctly, it should be a relatively low maintenance item moving forward.
Would you have to do that before, and I'm looking at option 4 now. Would you have to do that project before option 4 began construction?
I can't answer that officially, but I believe that you would want to do them kind of simultaneously, and I think there's probably some good faith involved. Like if you're working towards both at the same time, you know, the engineers would be working on them simultaneously as well. So I would say not exactly, but largely, yes.
Or at least, if not before, at least at the same time, not after.
Yes, right.
Because we would have to get a permit from the Corps of Engineers, right?
Absolutely.
And so they may require that you do it at the same time to mitigate any rising of the elevation.
Sure. But I will say the restoration project is not a very long project. Once you pull the trigger and the machines show up, you know, I would say it should be completed in less than 3 weeks. Yeah, they don't like to leave those exposed when, you know, they want to cover it up at night. But usually you come in, you shoot it to grade, you get everything leveled out, and you immediately come over it with like a coir mat or like a natural fiber type mat, and you start planting it. So, because they don't want a storm to come through that night and wash everything downstream, so.
So I realize once the machines show up, work gets done quickly, but starting from, if tonight is kickoff, you have to design it, we have to figure out how much it costs and fund it, all that. What does that type of a calendar look like?
I would say that would be almost completely on the grant cycle. I think that would be the kind of the hitch would be going after the grants, being awarded the grants, you know, having the bird in hand. But I would say the best case scenario would be a year and probably 2, possibly even 3 years. Mike Huffman could probably answer that better than I could. He knows the grant cycles.
I think my concern, this is to all of council, is I guess I feel that once we certainly committed tonight to the financing of Fire Station 1, and pretty soon we're going to be committing to doing Fire Station number 1, to wait 1 or 2 years to put some type of courts back into play, to me is too long. And I'm not opposed to this option 4, but, you know, just like with the putt-putt, you know, our hope was that next spring we would be replacing those amenities while Fire Station 1 is being worked on. To me, that timetable is a little bit of a problem for option 4 if that is the only option we were to move forward with. And I think, so as I've told you guys, I'm in favor of the pickleball courts over there where the racquetball courts were. And part of that, I guess, would be that we could begin that ASAP and start putting that together, so when the pickleball courts and tennis courts now go under, we have new courts to bring online.
If we put the pickleball courts where the racquetball courts were, we can't put a cover on it. Could we do like those shade sails, or like the power lines make anything?
You know, it's possible. We could also pay to have them removed or put underground. You know, we would have to flesh that out. But it's surrounded, I believe, on 3 sides.
Because I just feel like if we're going to put in pickleball courts, it makes sense to go ahead and cover them.
Right.
And I'll just give you an option that the budget team is sending me texts about. I mean, you do have, and it's probably this budget team behind me, but they're looking at each other. You do have ARP money that may be available, but it would take it away from the you've got some money that was about $2 million dedicated for nonprofit pool. We have $250,000 in grant money already. So, you have that option out there. You don't have to decide tonight, but there is that funding too, as it relates to money that you have.
And the cover is also something that could come at a later date as well. And to invest in, if you're going to invest in a cover, you may want to invest in a larger cover, kind of get more bang for your buck. I think it really comes down to the long term. But I think shade is just part of it. I think rain is also a big part of it as well.
Option 4 looks like it could be done in a phased situation. So Jerry, like I was thinking about, you're just kind of wanting to see things happen out there in a timely manner, but so the softball fields are towards the back, and what if phase 1 was resurfacing the basketball, tennis courts up front? This year, whatever, phase 2 is, all the while you're working on these things, but it's, I wouldn't think going to be all the money up front at the same time, because it wouldn't be able to happen anyway at the same time. So if we were able to do phase or option 4 in a phased approach over the next 2 to 3 years, then it seems kind of like a win for everything.
Another option is to refinish the tennis courts, leave them set up as tennis courts, but I believe we could put 6 pickleball courts with temporary nets. I'm pretty sure we could do at least 4 on that. It's not preferable, but essentially they're just lines, on top of lines, and then we would have the temp nets, and that would buy us some time. But that would take that from essentially 2 courts that we have. That would double it. That would take us to 4 pickleball courts for the short term. And then if we did get a bigger facility, those could always act as overflow.
Jen, I like your idea, because clearly whether we do no pickleball courts and no stream restoration, we still have some maintenance to do on the basketball courts and the tennis courts. So it's a good idea that we agree we're going to get those maintenance projects started. And maybe, because I agree with you, Lindsay, that a covered anything is going to get more use. And I'll just use the Sullivan Park basketball courts. They're always usable. I know sometimes it can rain really hard and water can get up under there. But I agree with you that anything covered is automatically going to get more use. So the cover beside the pool there, if we have to bury, power lines, that is, having to deal with another entity that we probably would rather not have to deal with. So I think I can see the phased construction if this is the one we're working towards. I also know, having spent a lot of time on that field, that if we don't do anything, they will be covered in mud because it will be flooded regularly right there where they're drawn.
Well, I guess I am not convinced that we need a dozen or more pickleball courts wherever they're placed. My feeling is that the parks we have limited parks. They should be for local people to use, not as a draw for all of Western North Carolina or all of the Southeast or whatever. I'm in favor of putting what we can in where the racquetball courts are for our local folks to use, and not have to spend close to $1 million for everybody in the pickleball tournament world to come to Hendersonville. We really, at this point, we haven't even seen the impact of the Acoustic Trail. I'm not sure that we need to have any more grand facilities to draw more people here. So I'm in favor of leaving the basketball courts, improving those, doing what needs to be done where they are, and putting in the pickleball courts where the racquetball courts are.
I'm also in favor of putting the pickleball courts where the racquetball courts was. I'm not in favor of putting courts where the basketball court is.
What did you think about option 4, though? Because that's not where the basketball courts are.
I don't think we need a huge facility.
No.
I don't think it's in the best interest of our residents to have a huge thing like that, drawing people from all over. I'd just like to see a few courts for our people to use when they wish to use it.
I would be interested to know what the current demand is for our residents. And so when we say our residents, that's not the 15,000 residents that are listed, but also our summer residents and our folks that live here part-time, which is probably closer to 40,000 residents, who use and are looking for pickleball courts regularly, and there are none, and there's not enough for the community. So I still feel like, even an 8-court covered court, I don't even know that would actually accommodate all of the current residents here. Just with the demand that I see from, my experience on Parks and Recreation and.
I know the demand is high enough that in the private sector, like Hendersonville Country Club is converting their tennis courts, some of them to it. I know that the Racket Club has also done the same, and it's to the point that demand is skyrocketing, and it is definitely causing a rift between the tennis community and the pickleball community. And I think that even if we went with 8 courts, I don't think that would be an exorbitant amount based on what I'm hearing from the pickleball community. I think it would be our local residents who use them 95% of the time, and there'd be a tournament here and there. And we could also regulate tournaments as well,
When you said we could fit 6 where the racquetball?
It would be
courts are?
tight, and yes, we could. The issue then is there's nowhere to congregate on the court, and then you have to also, from that point, you're also then pushing all of the pickleballers into the patent pool parking area, and then they have to kind of walk around and pass. So it's not an ideal site, but it could be functional. And one of the pictures that I showed in my drawing also showed that even if you don't cover it, it's nice to have some type of facility for them to be able to get off the courts or to have some shade available, whether it's just an area to congregate. Some facilities, would have like an 8 complex, but they may take out 1 court, kind of as a social area or more of a people waiting to queue up and things like that. But if we do put 6 courts there, it will absolutely be kind of compressed into the smallest footprint possible.
Well, how about 5 courts and a gathering area?
Sure. It will still be compressed, but that would give it more room to maneuver and kind of walk around the courts, like along the edges and stuff like that.
But not covered.
Probably not covered. I mean, it's doable. We could also see what demand does, and then, if the demand continues to skyrocket, add another facility.
I'd like to respond to a couple things. I guess, so the skate park that was built there clearly wasn't built for just people from Hendersonville, because there's only 2 skate parks. There's one in Asheville and there's one in Hendersonville. So while I know we want to build the best amenities that we have, but it's like Berkeley Park attracts people from all over the county to go around and walk around Berkeley Park. So I think by the nature, anything we build is going to attract people that don't actually live in the city. I think no matter what we do, because I'm sure there's lots of non-city residents that go to Patton Pool in the summertime, even if they're just going.
I certainly don't disagree with you on that.
Right, so, but, you know, I also know with regard to a cover, and that is, I mean, while I'd like to have one, I've never played on covered pickleball courts. I've never played on pickleball courts that have a gathering area. So I think, I hate to quote from Field of Dreams, but if we build it, they will come. I think wherever we put them, the pickleball players will show up and play on them. While these amenities, I'll admit, are nice, I think getting lines on the ground where people can play is really the most important thing, whether it's option 4 or whatever number the option was, putting it at the racquetball courts. So, you know, I realize some of these things are nice to have, but I know, you know, we don't have a place for people to really, it's not covered, and there's no congregation area where we're at the tennis courts by the putt-putt now. I realize the tennis courts make the area larger so you can sit next to it. Barbara, I think you have a good idea. Instead of putting 6, you put 5 and leave one area for the gathering area if you need one. I think there's a lot of competing concerns, and my concern is that it just gets pushed back, and then we're 2 years from now, we don't have any pickleball courts, where we certainly have an opportunity to get some sooner than that.
Because we don't have enough options. Another one is also that if we were to make the tennis courts slightly larger, 10 feet larger, we could fit 8 dedicated pickleball courts on the existing tennis court, and then we could also build at least 1 tennis court on the racquetball side as well. So,
How much use do the tennis courts there get?
mostly pickleball, from what I've seen.
Okay.
But disproportionate.
How about the ones at Boyd Park?
The Boyd Park, I see about 50-50, just me personally, when I'm going to mini golf and things like that. I'd say it's a mix. I know some folks teach lessons, tennis lessons there as well, so that's.
So we could do pickleball where the tennis courts are and put in 1 tennis court where the racquetball courts were?
Yes.
That would have us going from 4 tennis courts to 1.
But if most of them are being used as pickleball courts now, that's my
I do
only
think-
question.
Yeah, I get it. I do think that we would be stoking the pickleball tennis player civil war by doing
Okay.
that.
Well, it could also, we would be offering,
Civil War.
we'd also be offering some relief to places like Jackson Park and Mills River, which both have the same issues. But those are both kind of high wind sites, which is really poor for pickleball. So we would have kind of the preferred site. So we might be able to actually relieve some of the burden in those other parks and really focus the pickleball community towards the ideal site or a better site. And that's with or without a cover.
But we could put
Yeah,
a
I
cover
think-
on it if it was there.
Eventually, yes, yes.
And my observation at Jackson Park is that outside of lessons or high school tennis, everybody that's out there is playing pickleball. That's my observations when I drive through the park.
Mine
I
as
suppose
well.
there are other times, but obviously high school tennis uses it a lot. Hendersonville High School and East in the fall and in the spring for men's and women's tennis. So I have a question. So apparently, on the racquetball court site, it is possible to put at least 1 regulation-sized tennis court there.
Yes.
Okay, we can't put 2, but we could put at least 1 there.
It is exactly 100 feet wide, and you need a minimum of 109 to put in 2 tennis courts.
Right, so we can't put in 2, but we can put in 1.
Maybe a really nice one.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think the tennis community would love for us to put in a tennis court that has no pickleball lines on it.
I have a
That's what they
crazy
would
idea.
like.
What if we did on the racquetball court, 1 tennis court, 2 pickleball courts? And then on the old tennis court, 1 tennis court and 4 pickleball courts. So then you get 2 tennis courts, 6 pickleballs.
We could make I think we could make that work. We would have to expand the existing tennis court site as well by about 10 feet.
Do we have room for that?
It'll be close, but I believe so.
But that would mean a new fence then, right?
Yes, but we're going to have to take down a portion of the fence just to mill the concrete. And there's a couple of costs that, we may be able to save, like we will be reusing the lights from Boyd Park. We'll be using the fence that we can, but we can't really use the post. But there'll be some savings there. And we'll do everything that we can, staff-wise, of course.
And what you're discussing,
Could you
what
draw
mentioned-
us a few more diagrams with some of these options we've talked about?
Sure.
I like your
so
idea,
proud of
Lindsay.
us.
Look at us
Make a good compromise here.
I just want to Tetris the pickleball and the tennis courts together until we get the number that we want.
I will say, and one of the good things is we're talking about making real pickleball courts, which means the nets are slightly lower than a tennis court.
Real pickleball.
net.
Regulation nets, yes.
Yeah, regulation nets, which I'm sure all pickleballers would like.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
So can we put this on our next meeting, end of the month meeting?
maybe. I think we're gonna have a pretty long discussion
That depends
about-
on if you want 2 hours.
Well, and yeah, because there's several, so it'll be either on your 24th meeting, or we'll put it on that September meeting, either one of those two. But there's several of you've got items you want to talk about on the 24th, and we got to talk parking too. So I'll move some things around and touch base with everybody who wanted to talk about different things. So
Maybe you could send the diagrams out ahead of time, and we can
Absolutely.
look over and be a little more prepared.
Options for the options.
I think I have one other comment, though. I think no matter where we put the pickleball courts, we need to look at the stream bank restoration.
oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to, for pickleball and tennis, we're going to focus on the racquetball site, court site, and the existing tennis courts, and see what kind of configuration to get the most bang for our buck there. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, next we have a resolution, authorizing the exchange of approximately 16 acres of Berkeley Park for Edwards Park. This has been a long time coming.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor, Vogt, members of City Council, we are proposing a resolution drafted by your very own city attorney authorizing the exchange and negotiation of final contract documents to exchange approximately 16 acres of Berkeley Park for Edwards Park. The City Council has discussed this on numerous occasions. The full Board of Education has yet to have this discussion. However, they have seen the resolution and will discuss it with their full board on Monday, I believe so. But we would like to ask that you take first action and adopt this resolution, and then we can send it on to the Board of Education for them to discuss it at their meeting on Monday for their full board.
Any discussion?
I feel like
I just
this
have
is-
a question for, I'm sorry, I'll wait. I have a question for Angie in a moment.
No, go for it.
So the discussion about the historic designation for the park, I remember we were talking about this, Angie, I think even before you came on the city attorney, way back when we began discussing this, about putting that in the agreement. But my recollection would be, okay, we could put it in there, but there's no way to contractually bind someone to continue taking care of it as a historic site. Can you give me any thoughts on that?
Sure. The best way to do it would be to put in a deed covenant that the city could enforce. Is the only way that I can think of to do it. That would be the way to do it. So the resolution is pretty broadly drafted to allow staff, particularly the superintendent and city manager, to negotiate all these details. That is something that could be negotiated for. If the city council feels strongly enough about it, I would want to add it into the resolution. I will just say the school board attorney, has seen this and actually made comments, and it does reflect his comments, and so they would not have seen this. And so I don't know why they would object to it, but it just would be something new that I don't believe has been discussed recently. Is that right?
I mean, not recently. I mean, I think it's been a general understanding that, we're going to protect the historic ball field. That's why they want it. And so, but I don't know that we've ever talked about putting it in writing or anything, so.
Right, I guess my comment is it's not a deal breaker. I have to assume the school system would want it to would not want it to come off the list of historic sites, but I guess I feel like it's something that we could urge them to do. I just don't know contractually, even if it were a deed restriction, if the city of Hendersonville is going to be taking the school board to court because of something they did not do at Berkeley Park. And that's my reservation on that, because I just think they're getting it, and it's their responsibility to take care of it. And if taxpayers don't like how they were taking care of it, they go to a school board meeting and they complain to them about that, and they need to handle it. I know our transfer doesn't take it off the list, so it's certainly still on the list. And I guess my feeling is that would be a restriction that will complicate things a little bit, and I think is a little dicey to be enforced. Yeah. So that's what my comments on that. I think Mr. Fitch's comments are very worthy of consideration, and we talked about this at least 2 years ago when we were doing it, and I think at that time we were just like, this is going to be a hard thing to enforce, for the city to enforce long term, and that's why I think we kind of dropped that provision.
Yeah, I would hate to throw anything in at the last minute and mess things up. We've gotten to this point. We can have that discussion with them afterward, but to put it in the resolution or the contract at this point, I don't think is a good idea.
I agree 100%.
Further discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Okay.
I move the
May
city.
I make this motion?
Nope, just kidding.
Okay.
Do you mind if I make this motion, please?
What did
Go
you say?
for it.
He said, can he make?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, I move that the City Council adopt the resolution to authorize the exchange of property between the City of Hendersonville and Henderson County Board of Public Education as presented.
Is there any discussion? Not, we will take the vote. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Hensley?
Aye.
Ms. Simpson?
Aye.
Ms. Roundtree?
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye. All right, now it is up to the Board of Education, Monday. Hear back positively from them after that meeting. All right, next, resolution authorizing the installation of a stop sign at the intersection of Maple Street and 8th Avenue East.
Mayor, vote, members of City Council, we added this item. It came up at the last minute as we've been working on a traffic problem associated with Bruce Drysdale School. It has always been a concern along Locust Street, but the problem continues to get worse. And so staff has been working with, after some legitimate concerns from the local businesses on Locust Street, looking for options. And the reason I left this on the new business items is so we can publicize. The concept we've come up with is that other than moving the school, there is no perfect solution. And so we are proposing that we would direct parents who have pickup, which we're estimated about 125 cars go through the pickup line from about 2:45 to about 3:30, but parents start lining up at about 2 o'clock, about 45 minutes ahead of time, and really starts backing up Locust Street from multiple directions. So our proposal is to utilize, in the current configuration is you come down Locust, turn up 8th Avenue, and then turn back on Grove Street to get to the school. Our proposal is to utilize, continue to use 8th Avenue and Grove Street on the west side of Locust Street, but also begin to use 8th Avenue as it goes up the hill on the east side of Locust Street, and use both directions of Maple Street, which it's a residential street. It's not a through street. It actually is used for cut through. We would use some signage, and also we would propose to put a stop sign to create a three-way stop there at Maple and 8th Avenue, so that you could have alternate merge there and use for stacking of vehicles. Use Maple Street, 8th Avenue, up to the four-way stop, then through 8th Avenue up to Grove, and then into the school system. So you would still have cars on the roadway, but Locust Street, which is the main thoroughfare, would be open for emergency vehicle traffic, and allow people to get to those businesses on Locust Street. So that's our proposal tonight. All we're asking for, I want to publicize that, give that to council. But the only action tonight is to authorize the Public Works Director to put forth, install a stop sign on the northbound lane of Maple Street at the intersection of Maple and 8th Avenue East.
I have a comment. Because this has come up a lot in the last 2 weeks. It seems that the traffic and the car traffic would be greatly reduced if parents were allowed to walk to the school to pick their children up, like they have been for, 50 years. And we have a Walk Hendersonville steering committee so that we can get less traffic and less automobiles. And the parents are no longer at Bruce Drysdale allowed to walk to the school to pick their children up. New rule this year. And I have a big problem with that, and I think a lot of parents are very frustrated that is typically what they have always done. That is probably tripling the amount of car traffic that pulls through there every day now, because these parents are no longer allowed to walk to pick their children up from school. And many of the parents live very close by or bike their children. And so I don't know that we have the ability to change how a school allows their children to be picked up, but I'm very disappointed that they are no longer allowed to walk to pick their children up. I think it's incredibly, it's adding to the traffic issue down there now. So this is just like my soapbox rant, but it's a big issue, and I know a lot of parents are very frustrated, and it has added unsurmountable traffic now, car traffic, of parents who have never actually traversed through that line to now have to be required to do that line to pick their kids up. And I don't think it's okay. So there we go. Out in the open. Now you know how I feel about it.
I've received a lot of the same comments, like Cole goes to HES, so we still can walk up. And I have noticed the increase in traffic in that area. I will say either way, whatever the school system does with that situation, a stop sign in this area would be top notch. Because
Totally.
I have driven from Guidon to go down Maple, and it's a little terrifying. Yeah. It would be nice if everybody stopped. But yeah, I've heard the same complaints from parents, and I don't really know why.
All right. Any more comments about the stop sign?
Listen, this is all a symptom of the bigger problem, so.
Yeah, I'm happy to make the motion, though.
Okay.
We're ready. I move that City Council adopt the resolution authorizing the Director of Public Works to install a stop sign in the northbound lane of Maple Street at the intersection of Maple Street and 8th Avenue East.
Is there any discussion? If not, we will vote on that. Ms. Simpson?
Aye.
Ms. Roundtree?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Hensley?
Aye.
And the mayor votes aye, so we can get that stop sign in. Okay, we dropped F. for, from the agenda. City council comments. Anyone have anything they want to bring before us tonight?
I do.
Yeah.
Hold on one second. Next Tuesday, August the 9th, will be a 7th Avenue Brandon and Vision Roundtable with businesses and residents, all day. Please join us for a public meeting at 7 p.m. at the Operations Center, 305 William Street. And also, I'd like to make another announcement. Back to School Fest will be Sunday, August 21st at J. Sullivan Park from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Debbie, was part of that rebranding discussion, is that the meeting that was already scheduled? Or is this a new meeting?
It's the one that's been scheduled. There's several that day, but there's
Yes.
Yeah.
4 and 5:30
This
and
isn't new.
It's all day long.
Yeah.
These are all day.
Different groups.
A million meetings
Different
next week.
groups.
And there were going to be discussions too about the mission expansion at that meeting, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else have anything? If not, city managers report.
Simply to report that in your agenda packet for your review at your leisure we surplus several items in accordance with your policy, and which I'm authorized to do, but also we report it to the city council to show that what we've surplus and sold on gov deals or through the private market. So you have that. Mr. Buchanan's cash investment report is included there, showing how we're investing funds. A little bit of a double-edged sword, says that with the rising interest rates, we are seeing more returns on our investments, which is very positive, but we're also paying more on debt. So double-edged sword there. And Mr. Murr has put our contingency report using some of your contingency funds to cover insurance costs as we get our final renewals. And so that is all that I have.
Okay. In that case, we don't have a closed session,
No, ma'am.
so we are adjourned.